My name is Riley Carter, and I'm 31 years old. For 5 years, my life was a cycle of steel salt water and sacrifice. When I stepped off that helicopter after 28 straight days on the rig, the first thing I felt wasn't relief. It was exhaustion, the kind that clung to my bones. My work boots were coated in oil, my hands cracked and scarred, my hair stiff with the smell of jet fuel and sea salt. I would catch glimpses of myself in reflective glass at the terminal, a woman who didn't belong to the glossy image Marcus wanted for his life. But I told myself it was temporary. Every 12-hour shift, every bruise on my knuckles, every lonely night offshore, it was all a brick in the foundation of the life Marcus and I were building together. A 4-bedroom ranch house with a wraparound porch, circled and saved on Zillow, waiting for us like a promise. I thought he saw me the same way I saw him, a partner worth every ounce of effort. At home, our 2-bedroom apartment always greeted me with Marcus's perfume lingering in the air. Sharp cologne, expensive, the kind he sprayed just to sit on the couch and scroll. He worked an office job decent enough, though he always emphasized the word professional when describing himself to others, as if to remind me that my labor was somehow rougher, less refined. When I collapsed into bed after a rotation, he would lean away slightly, wrinkle his nose, and murmur, "You still smell like diesel and desperation, Riley," half joking, half not. I'd laugh it off, tell him I'd shower soon. Inside, the words gnawed at me. I convinced myself it was stress talking, that his embarrassment of me would fade once we owned the house, once I left the rig life behind. I imagined opening a small shop or managing contracts on shore. I imagined him finally proud to stand beside me. But pride was never what he felt. Not for me. Marcus lived for his phone. When I was home, he was present enough for dinners and small talk, but his real attention was glued to his private online group, a toxic cluster of men who thrived on mocking their partners under the guise of just venting. I noticed the way he'd angle the screen away from me, fingers flying in late-night conversations. "What's so funny?" I'd ask, half asleep beside him. "Nothing, just guy stuff. You wouldn't get it." The phrase "you wouldn't get it" became a knife he twisted casually over and over. I kept working. I kept paying the rent, the utilities, the car, and most of our living expenses. I funneled the rest into our joint savings account, where the Dream House Fund sat like a sacred offering. My whole body was a vessel of sacrifice for us. And yet every time I walked through that door, Marcus looked at me like I was something temporary, something to tolerate until he could trade up. I ignored the sinking feeling in my gut. I told myself that when he saw the ranch house keys in my hand, his smirk would vanish, replaced by pride. I was so wrong. The breaking point didn't come from his lips. It came from my best friend, Mara. 15 days into my next rotation, I was sitting in the cramped break room offshore, sipping bitter coffee, when my phone buzzed. Mara's message popped up. "Riley, you need to see this. I'm so sorry." Attached was a screenshot from Marcus's private group chat. My fingers trembled as I opened it. The post was his. Time-stamped late at night, 30 comments deep. His words glowed on the screen like acid. "Ugh, I know. I'm just so frustrated." She finally texted me from the rig, and honestly, I had to put my phone down. She's great for the savings account, but I'm over this whole sacrificial provider vibe. Honestly, she smells like oil and desperation the second she steps off the chopper. But at least she pays the rent. This is just temporary. I'm waiting for someone better. Someone who actually fits me. Can't let Chad see I'm still with her when she's home. It's embarrassing. Each line landed like a hammer. My stomach knotted. My chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped my insides out with a steel claw. 5 years of sacrifice stripped to a meme in a chat room. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, I felt a sudden icy clarity settle over me, sharp, surgical, and absolute. Marcus wasn't my partner. He was my parasite. And the life I thought we were building, it had never been ours. It was mine. I stared at his words until they blurred the letters burning into my skull. In that break room, under the hum of fluorescent lights, I made a silent vow. Marcus would never use me for rent money, never mock my sacrifice, never trade me in like a car lease again. The moment I finished my shift, I would erase myself from his life. For good. The offshore wind howled around the steel platform, but all I could hear was the pounding in my ears. Marcus's words from that screenshot repeated like an echo I couldn't silence. "She smells like oil and desperation. I'm just waiting for someone better." By the 15th reread, my coffee had gone cold. My hands didn't shake anymore. They were steady, precise. Rage didn't fuel me, clarity did. I dialed his number. The line crackled, distorted by distance and poor reception. After 3 rings, his voice answered, annoyed. Riley, what the hell? I'm in a meeting. My lips parted, but no tears, no pleading words came out. Just steel. I know you're waiting for someone better, someone more present. There was silence. Long, jagged silence, like a blade hanging in the air. Finally, Marcus's voice cracked through panicked and defensive all at once. What? What are you even talking about? Don't bother lying. I read it. Your little post in that group. The line hissed, and then his tone shifted fast, slick, rehearsed. Riley, it was nothing. Just a joke, okay? A dumb late-night vent. It was a private group, you weren't supposed to see that. I closed my eyes, feeling the salt burn behind my lids, but my voice stayed cold. Private or not, you meant every word. I was your paycheck, your rent money, your temporary embarrassment. His voice sharpened anger coating it now. God, you're so sensitive. You always twist everything. Maybe if you were actually here more than half the month, I wouldn't need to vent. You don't get what it's like to be stuck alone while you play mechanic on some floating junkyard. I clenched my fist around the phone. His contempt poured through the receiver, disguised as justification. Marcus, I chose that rig so we could have a house. I chose this sacrifice for us. He scoffed. Us? You're never even here, Riley. You chose that rig over me every single time. Don't act like the victim now. Just finish your rotation and we'll talk when you get back, okay? He thought this would end the way it always did, with me swallowing the hurt, apologizing, promising to make it better. Not this time. I let my voice fall into a finality so calm it almost scared me. No, Marcus, the conversation's over. You were clear about my role in your life. Disposable. Consider the break permanent. For a moment I thought I heard him inhale, preparing another excuse. I didn't give him the chance. I hung up. The phone felt heavy in my palm, but instead of collapsing into tears, I opened my banking app. With each tap, I transferred every cent from our joint account into my personal one. 5 years of sacrifice siphoned out of his reach in less than a minute. Next, I drafted an email to my supervisor. I need to take immediate PTO. Effective immediately. No discussion necessary. I hit send. The rest of my shift passed in a blur. My coworkers joked, cursed, carried on as usual. None of them knew I had just ended a 5-year chapter with a single phone call. Inside, I felt both hollow and powerful, like a woman stripped to bone but with iron still running through her veins. Marcus thought he knew me, thought I'd scream beg fight, but he forgot that silence is deadlier than rage. When I left that rig, I wouldn't just be walking away from him. I'd be erasing myself from his world, and he'd never see me coming. When the chopper blades cut the night sky and I landed on shore, I wasn't the same woman who had left 28 days earlier. I had made up my mind. There would be no screaming match, no messy breakup scene Marcus could twist into his narrative of being the victim. He fed on drama. If I denied him that, he'd have nothing. I would vanish. I rented a storage unit under my name the morning after I got back. The clerk asked if I was moving. I just smiled faintly, something like that. Then, while Marcus was at work, I slipped into our apartment. The silence inside was heavy, almost funereal. I had lived here for years, but the place already felt foreign, like it belonged to a stranger. The framed photos on the wall, use at barbecues, us smiling at parties, looked staged plastic. I set down 3 boxes and began packing. My hands, rough and calloused from wrenching bolts, moved with surgical calm. I chose only the things I had bought, only the things that were mine. Tools, clothes, keepsakes that mattered to me, not us. Each item I placed in the box felt like a piece of myself I was reclaiming. By the time the sun dipped low, the apartment looked almost the same, but emptier, as if a ghost had swept through and taken only the essentials. On the counter, I left a single sheet of paper. Marcus. The lease is terminated effective end of this month. All joint accounts are closed. My belongings are gone. You have 7 days to arrange your things with the landlord. Our matters are now separate. Riley. No emotion, no explanation, just facts. I didn't owe him more. When I closed the apartment door behind me, the latch clicked like a lock on a coffin. I walked away without looking back. The next days were a blur of erasure. I changed my number, deleted every trace of social media, gave my new contact info only to Mara and my family, swearing them to silence. At night, I lay in a bare mattress in a rented room, listening to the hum of the city outside. For the first time in years, Marcus's presence wasn't there, not his cologne, not his mocking tone, not his weight in my bed. The silence was strange, heavy, but also healing. I could almost hear his voice in my head trying to paint me as cruel for leaving this way, but I knew better. Cruel would have been staying, letting him drain me dry, while he laughed with his friends about the oil and salt on my skin. What I did wasn't cruel, it was survival. One evening I drove past our apartment building. The window of our unit was lit. For a fleeting second, I imagined him inside, finding my note on the counter, realizing he'd been abandoned without a word of warning. I didn't feel pity. I felt freedom. Because in that moment, Marcus didn't know it yet, but I was already gone. Not just from the apartment, from his world, from his reach, from his life. Freedom didn't taste sweet at first. It was metallic sharp, like biting down on blood after a fight. I woke up in a new city with nothing but a mattress, a toolbox, and the remains of my savings. The joint account I'd drained now sat in my name alone. It should have been for the house our house. But that dream had died in Marcus's chat room confession. So I built a new dream, one that didn't have his fingerprints anywhere on it. I leased a small warehouse, concrete floor, metal walls, skylights smeared with grime. To anyone else it was bleak. To me it was possibility. I registered my business under a name that felt like Armor Apex Industrial Services. No longer just a worker on the rig. I would be the one people called when heavy machinery broke down, when industrial lines failed, when others couldn't figure it out. I'd seen enough men underestimate me offshore, their smirks, their doubts, their surprise when I outlasted them on the line. Now I'd make a living proving them wrong. The grind was relentless. I studied for certifications at night, grease on my hands, and textbooks open across my kitchen table. During the day, I scouted contracts fixing everything from hydraulic lifts to conveyor belts. The exhaustion was familiar, but unlike the rig. This time, it came with ownership. Every hour I worked carved my name deeper into the foundation of something that was mine. And slowly Apex grew. Mara kept me tethered to the world I had left behind. She called one evening, her voice carrying that sharp mix of gossip and disbelief. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "Marcus got fired." I paused, wrench still in my hand. Fired? Why? That group post leaked. Screenshots made their way around his office. The partners didn't like the optics. They said he was unprofessional. And well, you know how small towns work. Everyone's whispering about him now. I leaned against the workbench, letting the information settle. So the man who called me embarrassing was now the punchline at his own job. Mara didn't stop there. Oh, and Chad. The guy he thought was his upgrade. He ghosted Marcus the second the scandal blew up. Didn't want the baggage. He's long gone. I didn't laugh. I didn't even smile. I just let the silence hum in the line between us. Inside, though, something cold shifted. Satisfaction, yes, but not joy. This wasn't revenge. I hadn't lifted a finger. It was simply karma doing its quiet work. Marcus's life began to unravel thread by thread. Mara told me his so-called friends drifted away, no longer entertained by his bravado. Without my income, his debt swelled. Eventually, he packed his things and moved back into his parents' house. The man who once mocked my calloused hands was now clinging to his mother's pity. Meanwhile, my hands built empires. The warehouse transformed into a polished workshop. Apex gained a fleet of custom vans, my logo stamped on the side. The first time I signed a contract that paid more in a month than I'd earned offshore in 3, I felt something Marcus had never given me: pride. Not borrowed pride, not dependent pride, but self-forged, undeniable pride. At night, when the shop fell quiet and the smell of grease lingered in the air, I'd sit at my desk and stare at the blueprint of what I had built. Marcus had wanted me to feel like desperation, but I had turned desperation into fuel. And now, while he sank, I was rising. Rising high enough that one day, inevitably, he would notice. And he would come crawling. It started quietly. A ping in my inbox one night after a long shift. Email, subject, "Riley, can we talk?" I didn't open it, just deleted it. But Marcus wasn't the type to stop at one try. Within weeks, the messages multiplied. First, the tone was light, almost casual. "Hey, I know things got messy, but I think we could work this out. I've had time to think." Then it turned apologetic, dripping with self-pity. "I know I was awful, but I've paid for it 10 times over. I lost everything. You were the good thing, Riley. I realize that now. Please just reply. I just need a friend." By the third email, his desperation bled into manipulation. "I'm literally eating ramen every night. You're successful now. Don't you feel even a little guilty leaving me like this?" I stared at the screen, the cursor blinking like a dare. But I never typed back. Silence was the only answer he deserved. Then the phone calls started. Unknown numbers lighting up my work phone at all hours. I let them go to voicemail. One night I pressed play on a message and froze. It wasn't Marcus. It was his brother, Riley, this is Ben. Look, you need to stop this disappearing act. Marcus is struggling. You've made your point. Okay. He's depressed broke, and honestly, it's cruel that you won't even take his calls. He told me you're doing well with that new business. Good for you. But don't forget who was there when you needed someone. My brother just needs a little help getting back on his feet. You could cover his credit cards, help him get a place. That would be the decent thing to do. Stop being a jerk. I replayed it once, just to make sure I'd heard correctly. Ben's voice carried entitlement, as if my success was a family trust fund, free for Marcus to dip into whenever he wanted. They still saw me as a resource, not a person, a bank account with a pulse. For a moment, I let myself imagine what Marcus must have told him, that I had abandoned him, that I was heartless, maybe even that my success was built off his back. The truth didn't matter to them, only their convenience did. I deleted the voicemail. At Apex, the work kept me grounded. Contracts poured in. I hired 2 apprentices, both younger men, who looked surprised to find themselves answering to a woman. I trained them hard, and they respected me because I knew my craft. And yet sometimes when I looked up from a project, I swore I saw Marcus's ghost lingering. Not him, but the possibility of him showing up. That gnawing sense that he wouldn't stop until he faced me in person. Mara warned me. He's going to find you, Riley. He won't let go. People like him never do. I brushed it off, but a knot sat heavy in my stomach. She was right. It was only a matter of time before Marcus stopped hiding behind emails and phone calls. He would come, and I would be ready. It was a cold Saturday morning at the Apex workshop. The skylights let in a weak silver light. I was at my desk, blueprint spread out, pen tapping against the paper when the security monitor flickered. A figure stood at the front door, thin, shoulders hunched. Marcus. For a second, I didn't move. I just watched him on the screen. His once tailored shirts were gone, replaced by something rumpled 2 sizes too big. His hair was unkempt, his eyes darting like a trapped animal. He had found me. The door rattled, a muffled knock, then his voice strained and trembling. Riley, please, just 5 minutes. I considered ignoring him, but I knew if I didn't face him now, he'd keep showing up. I unlocked the steel door and pulled it open. The cold air swept in, carrying his desperation with it. He froze at the sights of the workshop, the polished floors, the fleet of Apex vans outside the walls, lined with neatly organized tools. His eyes widened like he'd stepped into a cathedral. This place, it's incredible, he stammered. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. What do you want, Marcus? He shifted, trying to smile through the panic. I just had to see you. Look, I know I messed up. I was arrogant. I was cruel, and I regret it. But you, look at you now. You've built something amazing. We could finally get that house together. Everything we talked about, Riley, we could have it now. His words made bile rise in my throat. The audacity of him standing there trying to claim the life I had carved out of my own pain as if it were still half his. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I spoke with a calm that cut deeper than fury. You're right, I did build this, and I built it by cutting you out. His face faltered. Riley, that's not fair. I was stupid. I vented in the wrong place. But I loved you. You can't still be punishing me for one mistake. I stepped closer, my shadow falling across him. This isn't punishment. This is fact. 2 years ago, you said I smelled like oil and desperation. You told strangers you were waiting for someone better. I listened. I believed you. And I walked away. His eyes flicked around the workshop again, envy seeping through his features. But look at you. You're successful because of me. If you hadn't left, if I hadn't pushed you. I cut him off with a sharp shake of my head. No. I'm successful in spite of you. Every penny I would have wasted on your comfort, I invested here. Every hour I would have spent begging for your approval, I poured into this company. You didn't create this. You were the weight I had to cut loose so I could rise. For a moment, his lips trembled with something like shame, but it didn't last. His voice turned defensive, brittle. You're still holding this over me. You're obsessed with punishing me. Admit it, you still care, or else you wouldn't even bother talking to me right now. I looked him straight in the eye. Care no, Marcus. Not caring is exactly why I'm standing here calm while you unravel. You're not a chapter in my life anymore. You're just a lesson, a deleted comma. His jaw clenched, but his shoulders slumped. He had no power left here. I opened the door wider, not to invite him in, but to make my next words undeniable. You need to leave, Marcus. You don't belong here. Not in this workshop. Not in this life. The steel in my voice was final. He hesitated, eyes darting like he might try one last plea. But I didn't wait. I pushed the heavy door shut, the lock clicking with a decisive thunk. Through the metal, I heard him give one frustrated shout, wordless guttural. Then silence. I turned, walked back to my desk, and picked up my pen. The blueprint was still waiting. Apex was still mine. Marcus was nothing more than a ghost at the door. The sound of the latch locking still echoed in my ears long after Marcus's footsteps faded from the parking lot. That single click was more powerful than every argument, every tear, every sleepless night I had ever endured for him. It wasn't anger, it wasn't revenge, it was closure, pure and sharp. I sat back at my desk, pen poised over the blueprint. My hand trembled not from fear, but from release. The weight that had sat on my chest for years was gone, sealed outside with him. Through the glass of the office window, I saw the row of Apex vans gleaming in the pale light. Machines I had bought, a company I had built, contracts that bore my name alone. Marcus had said once that I smelled like oil and desperation. Now the smell of oil meant independence, and desperation that belonged to him. I thought of the girl I'd been at 26, exhausted, calloused hands, bleeding on the rig, telling herself the sacrifice was worth it because Marcus was worth it. She had been loyal, blind, and hopeful, and she had died the night she read that post. In her place stood the woman who learned how to walk away without a sound, a woman who cut her losses and turned betrayal into empire. The phone buzzed. Another email notification. His name lit up the screen. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Whatever words he'd written couldn't touch me. His relevance to my happiness had ended long ago, the night he broadcast my sacrifices as a punchline to strangers. Now he was nothing more than a ghost trying to haunt a house that no longer existed. A knock echoed at the workshop's front again. For a split second I stiffened, but when I checked the monitor, it wasn't Marcus. It was a client, my next appointment. I smiled. I rose, smoothed my work shirt, and walked with steady steps toward the steel door. The same door I had just closed on Marcus's desperation now opened to opportunity, to the life I had fought for with every ounce of grit in me. The past was locked outside.